This episode is brought to you by Bulletproof Script Coverage, where screenwriters go to get their scripts read by top Hollywood professionals. Learn more at covermyscreenplay.com. But Hook was a big deal when it was being produced. It was like everybody wanted to be on the set. It was huge. How did you get that gig?
Well, it wasn't a gig. I created it. My son at age 6 at the dinner table, who's now my writing partner, said, "What if Peter Pan grew up?" It was a game we played, the What If game. I was a very successable development deal writer who wasn't getting anything made.
But making a living. Walk
in and get a development deal.
Right.
I made a living, put the kids through private school, and my son would come home and say, "Dad, everybody wants to know what movies you've made." And I couldn't point to give me an F. So I went and said, I showed him the wall of scripts. I had written for Spielberg, I'd written for Frank Marshall, I'd written for Robert Redford and Paul Newman to reunite. I mean, I had some very prestigious gigs. None of them got made. So when it came time for, I decided that there were 2 films that I had to make, Dracula and Hook. And I was actually fired by CAA and let go because I hadn't had anything made, and I was in my 40s while I was writing Hook and Dracula.
Yeah.
Dracula was set up as a USA movie for television with a budget of $2.5 million.
Okay.
And dear sweet Karen Moore, who we're still friends today, paid me to write that script. At the same time, I was working with Craig Baumgarten and Greg Adelson on a development deal at Sony, and they came to me and said, "What do you have that nobody wants to do?" I'd pitched Hook all over town. When my son gave me the idea, and my daughter now was part of that, she just directed her 4th film. When we came up with Hook, it was blasphemy. You were treading on sacred ground. You couldn't have a grown-up Peter Pan. Steven was trying to do Peter Pan by Michael Jackson. Coppola had tried to do Peter Pan. Jose, there's a bunch of people had wanted, but John Hughes wanted to do Peter Pan. They all kept coming up with the same idea: the Darlings go back to Neverland, or the Darlings' children go back to Neverland. So it was always the same story. And it wasn't until Jake said, and during our What If game, Dad, did Peter Pan grow up? And I said, of course he didn't. That's a stupid question, being the good parent that I was. And Jake said, yeah, but what if Peter Pan grew up? And boom, the bells and whistles went off. We pitched it all over town. Everybody passed on it. Finally, Craig Baumgarten said, "What do you have that nobody wants to do?" And I gave him my 10 pages on Hook. Brought in Nick Castle, who I adored his film, The Boy Who Could Fly. We made a lowball development deal with Jeff Sagansky at TriStar, at Sony TriStar, as a favor. Nobody gave a shit about what we were doing. So Nick and I went off for a year and smoked cigars and drank single malt and took the idea of the story from, what was the worst thing I could do to Peter Pan to grow up, making him be a lawyer, So we spent a year on the script just having a ball. Sagansky leaves Sony and Mike Medavoy comes in. And usually, whenever the drill, the studio head changes and everything.
Oh, yeah, it's tainted. It's tainted. Yeah, it's tainted.
It didn't work for you. Mike Medavoy reads the script and goes, "Wait a minute, this is huge." And I don't know this is going on. I mean, I'm trying to pay the light bill, And so Medavoy got together with CAA and they went out to 5 directors over one weekend. And I still don't know who all was on that list, but I know most of them. And Stephen was the one who said yes. And my wife always knew that if Stephen found out about Hook, that he would do it, because it hit all of us right in our guts. We were all fathers. We were, Dustin was older, he had kids. Robin was turning 40, he had kids, and Stephen was having a new family. Everybody suddenly had that father thing going on, and that responsibility of what happens when you grow up and you've forgotten your childhood. So we were actually in Wyoming, staying with friends. We rented out both of our apartments. We had the kids, and I was trying to hope that my credit card worked to pay the lunch bill at Cadillac Jack's. And in those days, we didn't have cell phones. I had to go downstairs to the payphone, hope my credit card worked, and check my answering machine. Remember answering machines?
I do, sir.
Hi. And there was an answering machine from the message from John Levin, was my agent at CAA and still is in my representative for like 35, almost 40 years. He said, call me. There's a very big director that wants to do Hook. So I called him and we spoke, and I said, if it's not Spielberg, we're not having a conversation. And he went, that's who it is. So I went back upstairs to my kids and to Judy, and who were all sitting there, trying to figure out where we're going to go next, and gave them the news. And it was, it was a tremendous. It was like, it's one of those Hollywood stories. It happened, and I had written the script long before Spielberg was involved.
Right.
It's still an issue. That so much creativity. I mean, I created Rufio.
Mm-hmm.
I created that whole multiracial Lost Boy thing. We had Wendy grow up. We had Be Old. We did all the stuff. There's a lot more Barry in the script than there is in the Disney version.
Mm-hmm.
So it suddenly everything changed.
Oh, of course.
And Nick, it was difficult to watch Nick be replaced because we both worked so hard on this. That's why I insisted he get story credit. But within the same period of time, I turned in Dracula 6 weeks later. Now, this is an agency that fired me.
And were they representing you at this point?
I asked them to please stay. I said, I'm writing these 2 scripts. Well, nobody's going to do those. Just represent me until I get to that point where I'm done. Then you can cut me loose. And my lawyers tried all over town to give me. Nobody wanted to represent me. While I was writing these scripts.
Right.
Dracula had been done 100 times. Nobody was going to do Dracula. Nobody wanted to do grown-up Peter Pan. And to John Levin's credit, John Levin took Hook to Dustin and Robin. And they went to Steven.
Oh, that's how it went.
John
So it was through the actors, and they went to...
Exactly.
Smart.
Exactly. And John Levin went to Winona Ryder, and nobody could believe she wanted to do Dracula. And she's the one who called Francis and said, will you read this script for me? Because I need to know if I want to play a grown-up, Right. Plus, she'd stuck it to him on Godfather 3 by walking out the door, and we got to meet Sophia.
Yes, I remember, of course.
So in a matter of 2 months, I went from The Abyss to the 2 biggest directors in my world wanting to do 2 scripts that nobody wanted to do. Everybody passed on. So I didn't handle it very well. I was, all these agents suddenly call you back and go, hey, we were just kidding, all right, I didn't make the decision, it was somebody else's decision. And I'm just going, I'm the same writer I was when you didn't want to represent me. So I'll stick with John Levin.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's how I got the gig. I watched 2 of the greatest directors in the world struggle. I had such admiration for what they had to go through to get those movies made.
Because Spielberg, because Hook was a challenging film to make. It's technically and creatively, and I mean those sets. I remember hearing stories of everybody in Hollywood had to make a trip to the set because the sets were so amazing, and it was a tough sell too. I personally loved Hook, and I thought it was amazing, and it gives me warm feelings inside every time I watch it. And now more than ever, because now I'm that 40-something with kids. Mm-hmm. And I loved it when I was 20-something, but now it completely has a completely different connotation now. Like, oh, wow, shoot, it's a completely thing.
So now your kids see it.
And now my kids see it and all that kind of stuff. But